Hey there! If you managed to find this video, welcome to the channel, but you're currently watching part 3 of a multi-part review. You can find the first part through the card or the link in the description down below. With another instance of Sin brutally massacring people that the group has failed to prevent, team morale is at an all-time low. However, in spite of this, Yuna seems to be in high spirits. This confuses Yoshi since she should be the one in the worst mood. And surprisingly enough, the person to explain why this is the case is M.I.R.A.I, who states that she does this for the sake of keeping the team's spirits up, acting as a beacon of hope for them, and advises Yoshi to keep a smile on his face for her. Now, if you've been paying close attention to these series of videos, or you're watching the inevitable compilation of every part when I'm finished with this game, you've probably noticed that of all the main cast, M.I.R.A.I is the one I've talked about the least. And it's not intentional or anything, it's just that, up until this point, he's been completely silent. Most of the time he just stands around stoically and pushes Yoshi away when he attempts to go where he's not supposed to. In fact, the first real interaction these two characters had was in Besaid before leaving for Kilika, where M.I.R.A.I ambushes him out of the blue and fights him for a short bit. At that point it could be assumed that M.I.R.A.I hates Yoshi, or at the very least doesn't trust him. So to see him suddenly speak to Yoshi shows just how much his opinion on him has improved over the course of the pilgrimage. And if you ask me, I think Yoshi supporting him in Luca was the catalyst for this change. And since I spent quite some time talking about M.I.R.A.I's character, let's talk about the rest of the current supporting cast. Since he was first introduced, Wakka has been nothing but extremely nice, hospitable, and a great guy to Yoshi, and the two quickly bond due to this and their shared love of blitzball. However, once it's revealed that he's racist towards the Al-Bhed, his uglier side starts to show more and more. Yet the two of them are still friends, as is shown when Yoshi stops Wakka from assaulting Luzu after we revealed the truth about his brother. Lulu is an honest character, and not in the way that a fighting game character is honest, but in how she speaks. She rarely sugarcoats her thoughts, saying exactly what is on her mind. Like when she confronts Wakka about bringing Yoshi to Besaid, she tells him that you shouldn't have brought him here in the first place. However, this trait of hers can also lead to some of the game's sillier moments, like after rescuing Yuna from the Al-Bhed and Luca, the first thing she tells Yuna is,
"I hope you hurt them."
Orin is probably the most interesting character in the cast. He has this aura of mystery surrounding him. Right now, all we really know about him is that he's one of Braska's guardians, and that he somehow traveled back in time to watch over Yoshi for 10 years. But he clearly knows more than he lets on, often withholding information from the rest of the cast, even from the one who wants answers the most. Yoshi, okay, I can't take this anymore. I'm 9 hours into this game and I already regret naming Titus Yoshi. Instead of coming off as a stupid name that sticks out like a sore thumb, it just sounds like some typical Japanese name. Why couldn't Yoshi's name in the West be Terry or something? Ugh. Anyways, here on the Jose High Road, Yoshi asks how far Zanarkand is from here, and the short answer is, that's still far away, not helping with the distance to the detour to Jose's temple, located after a fork in the road. Yoshi remarks how they probably can't just skip it all, to which the group confirms his suspicions, saying that visiting all the temples is a requirement to obtain the final Aeon. As most of the group continues on, Orin reminds Yoshi not to tell Yuna the truth about Jecht, saying she would distance herself from him if she found out. Understanding his logic, Yoshi wonders if he really needed to know, to which Orin mentions that he preferred if Yoshi knew as soon as possible, rather than finding out at a critical moment and letting his emotions get the better of him, which, considering what happened after Sin's attack, ended up being the correct choice. If he figured it out right there, I don't think he would have washed up on shore. Arriving at the temple, it's quite apparent that it's incredibly loud. I'm not sure why they would build a temple in a location like this. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if the person who picked this spot for the temple got some serious divine punishment at some point in their life. Entering the temple that looks like it violates several different OSHA regulations, both from the outside and inside, we see another summoner returning from his trial. His name is Isaru, and his guardians are his two younger brothers, Pase and Maroda. Before leaving, he warns Yoshi about a rumor that summoners have been mysteriously disappearing. And before we move on, I want to mention that while playing, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I've heard his voice somewhere. So I checked on BehindTheVoiceActors.com and found out that it's goddamn Quentin Flynn, also known as the voice of Raiden from Metal Gear, Axel from Kingdom Hearts, and his most prestigious role, Penguin from Crash to Insanity.
Fish?
Jose's trial can look complicated, but it's actually surprisingly simple. You see, there's a circle shape on the floor with a symbol on it, and behind it is a door. If you place a Jose sphere on the slot connected to it, it shows a different symbol on it. Initially, I thought you just needed to match the floor symbol of the doors, but you actually just need a supercharged sphere to get it open. I also ended up spending quite a lot of time trying to figure out how to find the treasure, thinking that the elevator that spawns when you lay out the entire symbol on the floor takes you to the final chamber. Turns out this trial actually has a second floor, and that's where the treasure is hidden. Whoops. right as Yuna enters the final chamber to attain her next Aeon, Donna arrives with her guardian. He recognizes Auron and asks for a handshake, saying that Auron is the reason he became a guardian, although Donna doesn't really seem to care about this, calling Auron riffraff before her guardian confirms his identity. Hell, Wakka and Lulu take this opportunity to scold Donna for disrespecting someone like Auron.
And you call yourself a summoner?
Soon after, Yuna emerges with the Aeon Ixion, a unicorn aligned with the element of thunder. Now, if you think the names I was going to go with for the first two Aeons weren't that bad, then let me tell you that this guy right here is the main reason why I didn't commit to the bit. Like, let's be real, if I named this one after a My Little Pony character like Pinkie Pie or Rainbow Dash, is there any pony that would like that? I mean, I have no interest in this show whatsoever. Hell, the Aeon Yuna gets after this is Shiva, and there is no way in hell I would be okay with myself if I unironically named her Elsa. Entertaining the idea of that would get me crucified. Wait a minute. Before leaving, the group sticks around for a bit to help the survivors, while learning what some of them plan on doing now. Some decided to dedicate the lives they still have, attempting to redeem themselves to Yevon, like the remaining Chocobo Knights who were left with just a single Chocobo to their name, while others choose to give up and return home, like Gata after getting traumatized by finding Luzu's body torn in half. Jesus. Thankfully, this upsetting news does get a little easier to process once the next day comes and this lighthearted scene plays where the party pokes fun at how Yuna slept in. Hell, even Auron lets out a nice little joke as well. Now, I do believe that's everything regarding Jose, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm forgetting something important, so, give me a sec to review the footage to double check. Oh, of course, how could I forget? This place is also home to monkeys! With that detour finished, the next temple is located in Macalania, and much like with Jose's temple, there's a few areas to get through first. Up first is Moonflow, a location separated by a large river, with one side being covered by hills and the other being a forest. Making our way through the area, we get a look at our shiny new Aeon Ixion, who gets summoned by being yanked out of a portal via a lightning bolt connected to Yuna's staff. His special ability Arrow Spark deals non-elemental damage, thus ignoring all resistances, and his overdrive is simple, but effective, picking up the enemies in a ball of lightning and striking them with a charged up bolt. In other news, Yoshi used his starting overdrive enough times to unlock a brand new one, Slice and Dice, which is 3 separate attacks spread across all enemies, 6 if you perform the action command correctly. The other battle-related thing in this first area is another summoner duel with Belgemine, and after this duel, the game teaches you how to teach Aeons new spells. And it's a pretty simple process. Just pick an Aeon, select the spell you want them to learn, and if you have enough materials, the Aeon will learn said spell. Along the way, we encounter those same Ronso from Luca, who give the same warning Isaro told us about summoners disappearing, although instead of coming off as concerned about Yuna and her guardians, they use this warning as an excuse to make fun of Kimahri and his broken horn. Yoshi asks if they have something against him, but instead of answering, he avoids the question and insists that he will deal with them on his own. Reaching the Moonflow River, the party encounters a group of moon lilies and pyreflies, which are basically those soul-like things that represent the dead and fly out of defeated fiends and Aeons. It's said that when night falls in the Moonflow, fireflies gather around and cause the whole river to glow. Upon hearing this, Yoshi tries to suggest to wait until night, but is quickly shut down by Auron. He tries to compromise by suggesting to come back after defeating Sin, but is met by deafening silence from everyone, before eventually moving on to their means of getting across the river, the Shoepuff, a giant blue elephant-like creature that walks through the river. Fun fact from Auron, apparently when Jack first saw a Shoepuff, he was drunk, thought it was a fiend, and attacked it, which ended up being the event that caused him to stop drinking. Mounting the Shoepuff, Wakka shows off the ruins to an old Machina city underwater. Originally was built on bridges above the river, before the weight of the city caused it all to collapse. Nowadays, those ruins serve as a lesson for humanity to be wary of losing control of their own desires for power, thus justifying the prohibited use of Machina. Yoshi points out how people still somewhat use Machina, like with Luca's Blitzball Stadium, or, as a more recent example, the lift used to mount the Shoepuff, to which the response to that is that the use of Machina is specifically outlawed if it could be used as a weapon, to prevent another war from starting. Before Sin was born, the main use for Machina was to create weapons of mass destruction, and as they made more and more powerful weapons, it eventually caused Sin to appear and effectively end the war. However, this history lesson gets interrupted as the Shoepuff gets attacked by some Al-Bhed, and they take advantage of the commotion to kidnap Yuna in the open. Yoshi and Wakka get into hot pursuit after them, starting another underwater boss fight. Bet you forgot these existed. This fight is pretty basic. The only thing of note about this fight is when the extractor rises and prepares the depth charges. I don't know what it does, since when you do enough damage it will cause the boss to descend and cancel the attack, and with both characters hasted, they easily have the damage output to cancel the attack every time. Now, if you've been paying attention to the footage, you might have noticed that Yuna has her weapon drawn the entire fight. Since that technically means she was part of the fight, after being the boss, she appears in the results screen, but doesn't receive any experience points, and I find that hilarious. As the ride continues, the group realize that the Al Bhed must be responsible for the summoners disappearing. But then that begs the question, why are they doing this in the first place?
Those sandblasted grease monkeys!
Whoa there, Waka, that's a bit extreme, don't you think? Well, now we've reached the other side of the Moonflow, and there's something about that boss fight that interested me, and that's most of the attacks were directed at Yoshi specifically. It seems like whoever was piloting it seemed to really fucking hate him. I wonder what... Oh. So yeah, it turns out Riku is here, and the very first thing she does when she gets up is to take off her suit. Oh, thank God, she has another set of clothing underneath. Eesh, how many close calls is this woman gonna give me? Soon the rest of the party catch up to Yoshi, and he introduces her to them, telling them that she's the person who saved his life, and nearly fails the Unleash Quicktime event.
She's an Al Bhed.
Feeling good!
Yuna, Lulu, and Riku privately discuss about the possibility of Riku becoming a guardian, and they ask for Auron's opinion on the matter. He asks to see Riku's face, revealing her spiral eyes, a genetic trait of the Al Bhed. Thankfully, Auron doesn't object, and the final party member joins. And with that, we get another interesting story element, since we now have an Al Bhed in the party that has someone who has an intense hatred for those people, and we have parts of the story where the characters have to stop her lineage from being revealed, because, funnily enough, Waka doesn't realize here that she's an Al Bhed, despite her eyes being a dead giveaway. For example, later on at a rest stop, Rin sees and recognizes Riku, but doesn't say so after she quickly signals him to keep quiet about it. In combat, Riku is the thief character that can use the command Steal to get items from enemies or chests, which can now spawn in battles, and with the Use command she can utilize combat items to deal some great damage, which is useful because her basic attack leaves a lot to be desired. Her overdrive is where her real power comes into play, where she can combine two different items to create some kind of effect. For example, combining two bomb cores creates Firestorm, a multi-hit ability that does crazy damage. Soon the party enters Guado Salam, the hometown of the Guado people. It's in this cave area accented with a stained glass look and ends up looking super pretty. As soon as they enter, they are greeted by Trummo, who is basically Seymour's right-hand man. He tells them that Yuna has been invited to Seymour's home to discuss something important, although I have a hard time trusting this guy. With his mannerisms and the way he speaks, he just gives off some really creepy vibes.
Truly, it is good to have guests again.
As the party heads over, Riku stops Yoshi and gives up the gear customization tutorial. Oh, what? You thought I was done explaining what Riku can do? Well, joke's on you, I was never done! So, here's the catch with the equipment in this game. They don't have any stats. In fact, it would be more accurate to call them accessories. They can have up to 4 slots for abilities. Some can influence the stats of the characters, but they can also give elemental and status effects, or in the case of Censor, automatically display enemies' health and status. Much like how to teach Aeon's new spells, you'll need a certain amount of an item to attach a new ability. And yeah, that's basically it. This system isn't nearly as complex as the others, so it's not like it deserves its own section in the script. Although weirdly enough, I couldn't customize Brotherhood despite it having 3 empty slots. Not sure what's up with that. Entering the manor, there's a collection of portraits of all the past leaders of the Guado. Yoshi notes that they all look very similar, but Seymour sticks out a lot, and this is because his father, Jiskel Guado, married a human, who ended up being Seymour's mother. Seymour greets the party and activates a sphere that can recreate the thoughts of those in the far plane, and it gets used to create a projection of Xanarkand in its prime. Seymour mentions that a certain woman once lived in Xanarkand, this woman being the very first person that defeated Sin, Yuna Leska. Hey, now wait a minute! So yeah, it turns out that Yuna is actually named after Yuna Leska, implying that her father wanted her to defeat Sin, much like Yuna Leska did. But there's more Seymour has to say about this prestigious woman. To quote him, Yuna Leska did not save the world alone. To defeat the undefeatable Sin, it took an unbreakable bond of love, of the kind that binds 2 hearts for eternity. So in other words, she had help from her husband. Seymour then whispers something to Yuna.
Like and subscribe.
And this causes her to pace around and rush for a glass of water in a panic. What the hell did he ask her?
He asked me to marry him.
Oh! Naturally, this sudden question leaves Yuna uncertain about her answer, and needs some time to think about it. But before they leave, Seymour asks Soren why he's still around, and mentions that the Guado are keen to the scent of the far plane. Yoshi then proceeds to do the most Yoshi thing ever. Outside, the group discusses the potential outcome of the marriage if it went through, citing that it would give people something positive to talk about for a change. but it probably wouldn't last for very long, or not long enough to justify delaying the pilgrimage for it. Yuna then decides to go visit the far plane to think about this. So, remember way back when I mentioned that the far plane is basically the afterlife? Well, in Spira, people can go to the afterlife themselves to go see dead friends and family again. Lucky them, I suppose. Reaching the entrance, Orin and Riku wait outside instead of entering. Riku doesn't enter because it's a common belief from the Al-Bhed that the people that appear in the far plane are just fireflies that react to the memories of living visitors, and she prefers to keep her memories to herself, while Orin stays behind simply because he says he doesn't belong there. Entering, we see that only Wakka and Yuna are meeting up with dead relatives. Wakka takes the chance to meet with Chappu, giving him undeniable proof that Yoshi really isn't him. Although, I gotta say, Wakka, in my opinion, Yoshi looks nothing like your brother. Yuna meets with her dead parents and has decided that she will decline Seymour's offer, remembering that when Braska defeated Sin, everyone around her was extremely happy, ultimately realizing that defeating Sin would be far more important to Spira. However, she's not ready to leave, and asks Yoshi to try to call Jecht. Obviously, because we've established that he is Sin, he doesn't show up. Yoshi remarks that he doesn't want to see Jecht again. When Yuna asks why Yoshi hates him so much, he attempts to give an explanation, but as he mentions his mother, she suddenly appears before them. This confuses Yoshi, as he knows no one could have performed a sending for her, since he didn't know what sending was until he came to Spira. Yuna responds with a theory that she must have accepted her death while she was still alive. And at this point, Yoshi suddenly has a revelation about his parents, remembering that whenever Jecht was around, his mother would pay very little attention to him, and when Jecht went missing, she seemingly lost her will to live, and both of these events ended up being the main source of Yoshi's hatred of Jecht. But now, he starts to realize that deep down, Jecht probably cared about him more than he once thought. Once the group leaves the far plane, they soon see a spooky ghost, specifically Jiskel's ghost, attempting to leave the far plane. As Yuna sends him, the spirit drops a sphere that Yuna takes with her. Everyone is confused that Jiskel's spirit appeared outside of the far plane, theorizing that some kind of powerful emotion was able to bind him to Spira, implying that there was something up with how he died. Yuna enters the manor to give Seymour her answer, and two main things happen. First off, Yoshi and Lulu talk about the marriage, Lulu stating that as long as the pilgrimage continues, she's fine with whatever Yuna decides. Yoshi, concerned about the simple answer, brings up the possibility of Yuna not even liking Seymour, let alone loving him. Lulu counters by bringing up that not everyone marries for love, which is why the group initially just mentioned the outcome. But even after hearing this answer, Yoshi still doesn't quite understand this logic. Not helping is Lulu mentioning that she would prefer that Yuna would marry for love, while in the exact same breath says that she would object if Yuna said she wanted to do just that. Ending this topic between the two, Lulu warns Yoshi to not fall in love with Yuna, and you're given 3 dialogue options, 2 of which are fairly normal options, while the last one will give you the death sentence. The other main thing is that Yoshi runs into Shalinda, who tells him that Seymour has left for MA.R.A.I Temple, and upon hearing this, Yoshi quickly tells the party the news in one of the best cutscenes in the game.
They say Seymour went to MA.R.A.I Temple.
M.I.R.A.I Temple.
Alright.
All signs are pointing to MA.R.A.I Temple as the next destination, and first up for the trip is the Thunder Plains, a desolate wasteland constantly barraged by lightning bolts. In order to progress safely, you're urged to stick around these lightning rods, which will protect you, but when you're away from these rods, you'll have to dodge lightning by pressing X as soon as the screen flashes. And if hearing that reminded you of something, then yes, this is indeed the game where you need to dodge 200 lightning bolts in a row without leaving the area to obtain Lulu's ultimate weapon. Now, I wasn't anywhere close to reaching that requirement, and you know what my personal best was for this session? 2. I dodged 2 in a row. And why is that? Because my time traveling here consisted of getting used to the dodge mechanic, pressing the dodge button for what I thought was a flash when in reality it was just a random encounter, or the 5 times I got blindsided by lightning immediately after a battle ended or exiting the main menu. In fact, that's the only interesting thing that happened in this place outside of characters learning new overdrive modes and story stuff. The trip to the Thunder Plains is going pretty well for most of the group. However, Riku in particular is having a rough time due to her fear of lightning, which came from her brother accidentally hitting her with a lightning spell when he intended to hit a fiend attacking her. As the group reaches another rest stop, Riku tries to convince them to spend a night inside so she can calm down, and her desperation shows as she practically begs for the group to stay. So it turns out the news of Seymour's offer to marry Yuna has spread incredibly fast, as it seems like a lot of the Guado people have been telling everyone they come across about it. A strange thing to happen considering Yuna hasn't even given Seymour her answer yet. As the group head into their rooms, Yoshi overhears something from Yuna's room, and while trying to figure out what the noise is, he accidentally pushes the door open and falls into the room, witnessing Yuna looking at the records of the spear dropped by Jiskel, and she claims that the spear is his will, urging someone to take care of his son. Leaving the rest stop, the journey through the plains continues, and after a while, Yuna suddenly wants to tell the group something important. Strangely enough, Yuna has a change of heart, and decides that she will marry Seymour. When asked why she changed her mind so suddenly, she claims it's because it would be the best thing to do. Upon hearing this, everyone immediately realizes that the real answer can't be so simple, concludes that Jiskel must be involved somehow, and requests to see what was on the sphere he dropped. She denies this request, wanting to speak with Seymour beforehand. As the rest of the party continues, Yoshi and Auron discuss why Yuna changed her mind, with Auron suggesting that she hopes to negotiate him about something. After the Thunder Plains is M.I.R.A.I Woods, a really pretty forest that looks like it's made entirely out of crystals. This is a fairly short area in the story, purely meant as an interlude area. Only 2 major story events are here, and hell, outside of that, there are only 2 things of note to talk about. First is this part where you touch this rainbow butterfly to start a minigame where you follow a path and touch all the blue butterflies while avoiding any red ones. And, you know, it's not too bad. Just a fun little diversion. The second thing completely caught me off guard, and that is that I discovered that Brotherhood miraculously gained abilities. Believe me, it wasn't me that did it, it just suddenly got Strength plus 10, Water Strike, and Sensor without me noticing. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but it's really strange how I randomly got Yoshi's second best weapon in the game. My best guess as to how this happened is that it gained those abilities after Wakka talked to Japu in the far plane, since after Wakka mentions the sword, Yoshi will take a look at it. But that wasn't a solid enough answer, so I looked around online to see if that's what actually caused it, and my results were... yeah, that's exactly how it works. While exploring the woods, we ran into Donna's guardian trying to find her in a panic. Thankfully, Auron is able to help by calming him down and putting him into the right mindset. First, he must guard his emotions, and then he'll be able to guard his summoner. Hopefully he can find Donna before she joins the rest of the disappearing summoners. You know, despite the fact that she's a bitch. Before we're leaving, Auron wants to show Yoshi something important and leads the group into this hidden area. But before Auron can reveal the reason he brought the party here, a gelatinous fiend arises and attacks the group. The Spheromorph is a boss that's immune to all sensors, and there's a good reason why, because it changes its elemental affinities as the battle progresses. It will only take damage from a single element, while absorbing the other 3. You can tell what element it's weak to by using the opposing spell it uses to attack. Of course, it can still take damage from normal, non-elemental attacks, but the design of the fight clearly wants you to use Lulu, since by now you should have access to the tier 2 Black Mage spells. And luckily for me, I've had them unlocked since Jose. But I have to say, I can't believe this was a boss I forgot was in this game, especially considering the way it morphs into different shapes for all its moves. And, I bet, unlike the Sin Spawn Gui boss, this fight has no similarities to a different RPG's boss fight that I just happened to be playing in the same time frame as this video's production. What do you mean the Emperor and Empress boss fight in Persona 3 Reload has basically the same strategy? Upon the boss's defeat, it drops a sphere. Auron explains that Jack left it here 10 years ago, and investigating the sphere, we see a few recorded scenes of his journey throughout Spira, where he takes a more laid-back approach to the journey, recording the whole thing to show off to his family when he returns home, until reaching the part where he's in M.I.R.A.I Woods all by himself, recording a message for Yoshi. And just by listening to how he speaks, he definitely sounds like a new person. And he finishes the recording off by telling his son that he believes in him. After listening to the recording, Auron talks about how Jack changed throughout the journey, eventually accepting that he'll never return home. Hearing this, our hero understands Jack's decision and starts to accept that he too will most likely never return home. I guess you could say this is a classic case of like father, like son. Of course, all this doesn't change the fact that Jack is a shitty parent.